Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. An interesting thread here on the forums caught my eye. It's interesting that in DDO they've added a lot of different character stats in terms of things we have existed in the game, but we didn't really have a way to track it. What I'm referring to is the character plus tab that's on the character screen now, where you can look at like DC details, breakdown of defenses, things like that. But when it comes to the quest screen, the quest and completion screen, there's really not a lot there. It's still basically just breakables and kill count. And there's a poster here on the forums here. He kind of recommended that some things be added, and I actually think it's a pretty interesting idea. So what they said here is, Dear SSG, please add HP healed, damage dealt, damage absorbed, monsters immobilized to the XP quest summary screen. DDO shines brightest as a team sport in my opinion. I think it's time to celebrate healers, tanks, and CC as well. And I think, first of all, more info is always good. Like if they could add this stuff and it wouldn't be that difficult for them to do, that would be awesome. I think there definitely is a little bit of a stigma in the community. I think it's overblown generally, but I think there is a thing where you look at the kill count and it does really emphasize kill count and DPS, whereas other roles, so say like you did a really good job healing people in the quest, or doing a lot of crowd control, that's really not highlighted a lot. And I know that these things, a lot of you might think that this is really silly. Who cares? It's just a number on a screen. It doesn't affect anything. It's not practical. It's not a pragmatic thing. Yeah, that's true. But I think these things do matter. I mean, in this game, people like to know that their character is doing well, that their character is contributing. People like to feel, that's one thing. I think people may not care as much if care that they are necessarily like leading the pack in terms of kills, but if people can actually see that they are contributing, I think it can make people feel better. So something like this, plus just having more stats is just interesting. So if they could do, if the dev team could add some of these things, I think that would be really cool. I mean, there's a lot of things you could say against doing this. For example, this poster here, scrolling down, makes a couple of good points. He mentioned that it could make newer players look bad, which could hurt morale, encourage highly selective grouping. So for example, if we had more stats, yes, it would show off the efforts of, say, like a healer or a crowd control person, but at the same time, having more information would make it even more apparent if you're a character that's not really contributing in a group. So if you're not showing up anywhere on there, you can't really use the excuse that, oh, yeah, I may not have killed a lot of things, but I was back there healing. But then if we have the log, it'll say on the quest completion screen there, no, actually you didn't really heal that much. So that's one downside, I guess. I mentioned here that it makes underperforming players look bad, which fosters an environment of elitism. Kind of mentioned that already. And it doesn't encompass every possible way a party member could contribute. That's true. So no matter what they do, I mean, there'll always be more things they could add. Although I would say I don't think this is as big a deal as the other point he made, because they could simply pick the most important ones, things, crowd control stuff, healing stuff. Now, that leads to another problem where it's like, is this practical? Could they actually do this? First of all, I will have to say, if something like this takes any significant amount of developer time, it's just not going to be worth the time, right? There's far more better things they can spend the time on, and I know for them, it's always a matter of what do we want to spend our time on, because there's probably I know there's got to be a huge list of things they want to do, but it's just a matter of where their time is best spent. Every hour a developer spends on something costs them money. That's time that's got to be spent wisely. So they can't necessarily tackle something like this, or even if it was desired, which I don't know if it is or not, but if it's not financially worth it, they can't. I mean, I think everyone would say they would much rather developers stick to something like fixing bugs, making new content, than spend valuable time on stuff like this. Though, if it is something that's really quick, that would be awesome. If they could do it really quickly, maybe they could. I don't know. A lot of this information is tracked in the combat log. So is there a way they could simply transfer this from the combat log to the quest completion screen and kind of summarize the data, because let's be honest, that combat log goes so fast, no one really looks through it like really detailed. Like no one really goes through that combat log in a detailed way, because there's just way too much information. So if there's a mechanic, even if it's not on the quest in log, I think it would be really interesting if that stuff could be somehow summarized. That would be really interesting. Be interesting to have that information, and it's there. So I would assume it's just a matter of taking the information and porting it, having some kind of code to port it and sort it. So it would be really interesting if they could do that. The other obvious issue would be lag. That would be more calculations, more things that the server is doing in the background. If this adds lag, obviously not worth it. So I guess let's scroll down a little bit. A lot of these posters highlight what I've mentioned. This next poster here lists a bunch of things that could possibly be tracked by this and things that may or may not be worth it. And he tries to make the point here that there's way too many metrics to judge this by, to possibly come down to ones that make sense. And people always complain and want more, but I still don't really buy that. I think that you can just pick the general ones. I think we could narrow it down to like 5 or 10. I think there's other people like this poster here, which I think is interesting, where he mentioned that he'd go the other way and remove individual kill counts or anything that would really identify who was the most active during quests. I think I get this point of view in terms of that you don't want to make people feel bad, but at the same time, no. I mean, kill counts have always been there, so I can't see a legitimate reason to remove them. I mean, they've just been around too long. And I think more information is better than no information, because we can also make people feel better by giving more information. And I don't think it's necessarily good to promote, like, I guess, removing information to hide bad performance from a player. Yeah, that might hide a player's lack of doing DPS in a group, but it also makes it so they aren't encouraged to improve. It also means that the players that are doing really well don't feel rewarded, because players like leading kill counts. That's just the way it is. I mean, part of this game is not just completing the quest. People like to show off. People like to hit certain numbers. People like to feel powerful. So it's not a thing I would want to take away from those players either, that have really awesome characters who have worked their butts off to, get certain DCs or whatever that let them perform really well in quests. So I wouldn't want to do that either, but I certainly see why some people would say that, but I definitely wouldn't want to change it just because we already have the precedent of kill counts being there. So if anything else, I would just want to add stuff, not take stuff away. So, yeah, guys, I thought this was a little interesting thread to kind of read from it. After these first few posts, it kind of breaks down. After that, it doesn't become as much worth reading, but it's really was an interesting thread, I thought, at least the first several posts. So, yeah, guys, let me know what you think. I mean, I think if something like this would not add to lag and would not take a significant amount of developer time, that would be really cool. I like stats. I would love to see more information. So, yeah, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time. Have a good one and take care.